a nonpartisan race, and there's no incumbent in the race. You have John Welsh, Ed Davidson, and Sloan Baczynski, who is a write-in candidate. So you will not see his name on the ballot, but you will see a blank line where you can write his name in, and we have the appropriate name tag for him. We'll be starting off with A.B. Malloy. A.B., it's all yours.
Ed, this is a question for you. If elected, can you tell me what steps you take to improve relationships between the school district administration and school district teachers, from a policy perspective?
Well, the first thing I do is apologize to them for the way they were mistreated by previous administrations, to the way that we fudged the figures, that we negotiated a contract that we knew wasn't going to be honored. The superintendent was told by the CFO that we didn't have the money. He negotiated a contract he knew he was going to break. And then we turn around and scapegoated the teachers and blame them as though they're being greedy, expecting to get what the district had promised them in order to get them to give up tenure earlier than state law would require, to give up seniority and step raises. So we should start by apologizing and assure them that from now on it's going to be collaborative bargaining between members of the same family and not the combative kind of bargaining that we've had in the past, and unfortunately we're stuck with the tail end of that with a hired gun lawyer from Miami. Once we're through those necessary legal proceedings in the aftermath, that should be the end of that kind of dealing, and we should be back to talking amongst ourselves. So we're a real family, and we need to do the best we can to marshal the resources to give the teachers what we promised them. If I had negotiated that kind of a contract in business, I'll be talking to the state's attorney and it wouldn't be a resolution.
So I'd like to have a follow-up question, John, and that is specifically as a board member, do you think it's appropriate to become involved in employment decisions about individual employees?
In certain instances it is. It's spelled out in legislation. Employment disputes for teachers always come to the board for termination. There may be other instances that come to the board. The superintendent may bring you some incident that needs a decision. He may have to poll the board for their opinion. So in certain circumstances, yes, it's acceptable and it's done quite regularly. If that's what you're looking, in that line. Terminations have to be ratified by the board. Rarely are they changed. Rarely are the decisions changed by the board. Usually they go along with the superintendent's recommendation.
This is a question for all three. And John, we'll start with you. And I'd like you to be specific. Right now, the county spends more per pupil than any other county in the state of Florida on K-12 education. What specific policies would you implement if elected that would help the taxpayer get better bang for their buck? John, we'll start with you and then Sloan.
Specific policies were locked into the budget right now for this upcoming school year. There's not a lot you're going to realistically be able to do. I could give you a lot of political rhetoric changes you're going to make, but the budget is locked in. The student-based allocation is set. That's not going to change. The FTE, the full-time equivalent that the state is paying in Monroe County School District, that's already set. That's not going to change. I read in the paper 2 days ago that the Department of Education recommended to the governor a 4.4 increase in the funding. Now, keep in mind, it's a recommendation. It has to go to the legislation, and oftentimes there's other parties looking for that same chunk of dollars that the legislation and the Department of Education has recommended to the governor. I think there's a good chance this year for an increase of funds. I think the governor has publicly said that he wants to increase. On that same line, there are school districts in Florida that are loosely connected, that lobby in Tallahassee for additional funds for education. They also have formed a loose coalition to empower them with lobbyists in Tallahassee, specifically to increase the funding for education K through 12. There are similar for college level organizations, but I'm really not well versed in that.
The fact is that the budget isn't set in stone. It's always been a dynamic and changing, sometimes frequently changing document. That's because so many of the basic fundamental stuff of the budget are assumptions and guesstimates, and they're sometimes off in both directions. And so it's necessary that we deal with a document. We don't have to wait another year before we can fix anything. We need to analyze what those assumptions were, because we're going to inherit somebody else's budget. And to the degree that the analysis tells us that something can be changed, money can be appropriately shifted to better use, and that's what we should do instead of waiting for another year.
I have a question.
Currently, Monroe County spends more per pupil on K-12 education than any other county in the state of Florida. What would you do to make sure we get the most bang for our buck?
The only reason that happens is it's the most expensive county in Florida. You have to pay more for teachers, for staff, for bus drivers, and for everything. So if you average it out, it's not more per pupil. If you take that out, factor that in. I think you need to increase the spending per pupil. I don't think you're spending enough. You're not paying your teachers enough. And to do that, you're going to have to raise taxes. There's no other way to cure what he described as a terrible morale problem. Apologies not going to solve the problem. They were promised a certain amount of money. The school district reneged. It'd be like defaulting on a bond, except you're dealing with the teachers and not with a bank. And that's what the school district did. And not only were they told by Michael Kinnear the money wasn't there, they were told by Larry Murray the money was not there for the collective bargaining agreement. And the school board approved it anyway, including Andy Griffiths. You're going to have to raise taxes, or you're just going to keep bringing the same old in the citizen and the kingdom.
This is the sort of three different questions going down the line, things you all heard on the campaign trail. First for John, if you can explain the issues surrounding the retesting of 500 students when you were the principal of Key West High School, how that came about, because that really falls on your shoulders. Ed, for you, what I've heard a lot is that if you were elected, you're too overbearing and you would not be able to get consensus with people. And Sloan, people ask, why are you running?
Good question. You go first.
John, it's the whole issue of the retesting of the 500 students on the standardized testing when you were principal of US High.
Actually, that happened after my tenure at Key West High School. What people don't understand about high school students, when you come into high school and you're classified as a 9th grader, you may fall behind in credits that year. You may be there for your second year and still be classified as a 9th grader. In other words, you need to earn 6 credits to become a sophomore. If you earn 5, you're still a 9th grader. That has a cascading effect over the years. I'm not 100% positive what standardized test you're talking about. We give the FCAT, we give the PSAT, we give the SAT, and we give the ACT. But none of those tests, other than the FCAT, would have that staggering number.
Okay, these are online makeup tests.
That wasn't there when I was there. they have now, but I understand the philosophy behind it. What I described to you about credits, once you fall behind, then you can't graduate on time. If you fall 1, 2, 3, 4 credits behind, you have to give a vehicle to those students to make up those credits, so hopefully they can graduate at the end of the 4 years. We've had contracts with the teachers for extra work to improve their grades. We have had online courses before that were called NovaNet that were run by an outside agency that could access them online. And now they have, I think it's called Ed Options, another program where you can actually go online. And they're not easy courses. You can also use Florida Virtual School to gain credits. The name of the game is to get to 26 credits in 4 years. Unfortunately, there's always a percentage of students that don't get all those credits. They fall behind, they fall further behind, and they can become potential dropouts, depending on the number. I hope that answers your question.
Very few bureaucracies ever reform themselves voluntarily. The Concord Public subculture of job entitlement, family favoritism, and lack of accountability is certainly not going to relinquish its old ways without some forceful voices for reform. If you think that somebody who's been part of the bureaucracy for 35 years will fix things, then I guess you should examine the record of Ron Martin. Nice guy, great guy. Hasn't leaped up too many hills. If you want a second guy who spent 35 years as part of the bureaucracy, and those are all reasons not to aggressively fix things, then you can vote for Mr. Welch. If you want somebody that's done his homework, who said on the record and on camera many times what's wrong and what needs to be fixed, and he knows what the arguments were that prevailed and didn't, and can remember countless times when we lost reform efforts by 2 to 3. I'm the third vote, and we'll get it done. Does that make me overbearing? I don't think hardly anybody who's ever met me, like me or not, doesn't know they meant a true believer in doing what's right in the public domain. I've devoted my whole life since I got out of Southeast Asia alive to doing exactly that. And for a lot of reasons it should be apparent. That's what I do with my life: public service, environmental stuff, and formerly county stuff, and now school stuff. Because it's the right thing to do, and it needs doing.
Well, I agree with Ed's view of the bureaucracy. And why am I running? As you've already seen, and you're getting ready to hear some more, I will say things that nobody else don't tell you, whether you like it or not. For example, I was at a school board meeting last winter, and it came out that 500 Key West High School students had used the Ed Options online program on your dime to make up classes they had flunked at Key West High School. Now, what's wrong with Key West High School that something like that would happen? Did we hear any more about that? They swept out under the biggest rug you ever saw. They accused Sonny Booker of the worst things you can imagine. And I can't even get a Freedom of Information Act report about what the outcome of that investigation was. I don't even think they did an investigation. They just left her accused of passing students that weren't making their grades, of abusing the Ed Options program, but they swept that 500 student thing away. We don't hear about that. Folks, there's so much about the school district you are not hearing from the school board. And I've been writing about it for a year in the GoodMorningFloridaKeys.com. Mark Cole told me last April that Hometown's First and Sloan on our websites are required much time I got left. Damn. Let's get started.
Question for John and you might want to. Mr. Davidson has mentioned you're 35 years in the system, and has also noted in the campaign trail that we have one former high school principal on the board already. What's to be gained by having a second?
Bill, I don't think people are defined by their careers. I think every individual is defined by his life experience. Remember, if you're elected to the school board, one of your primary functions is to create policies and procedures that ensure a quality education is had by all the students in Monroe County District. I have extensive experience working in the academic side. I can ensure that students receive a good education, your sons, your daughters. I don't think people should be defined by their careers. I'm not going to bring up other people's names. I think a lot of that is political rhetoric. And I'll leave that enough said.
Captain Ed, if you care to weigh in on that?
This job is school board policy level, not principal of the year. And we don't have academic problems. Test scores given for invalid tests. There's plenty to say about that. The kids are doing well. We have our numbers in advanced placement courses are good. Dual enrollment, all that kind of stuff. Our numbers are good. We don't have academic problems. We have financial bungling problems. We have mismanagement problems. And we have occasional ethical problems. As for life experience, I devoted my whole civilian life to public service. And that has most often involved reforming, reorganizing, revitalizing associations, nonprofits, occasional businesses, foundations. It's my universal experience that most of the solutions to most of the problems already exist in the building, that they're in somebody's bottom drawer because of failures, leadership failure to inspire, failure to listen, failure to power. And that's how you solve the problems in a community-based school system, not a bureaucratically determined school system.
You want me to pick on Ron Martin too? I'm not going to do it. I ran for the county commission when he was running for the school board. I like what he was saying. He's the only school board member that said we need a tax increase. He's the only one with the damn good sense. And I was at that board meeting when he said it. And I watched how he was beat up by the other school board members and this guy off of saying it. Carl Schwartz is where he taught, and they got a pretty good trade school program up there, in my opinion, compared to what's down here. He said he was in favor of trade education. The school district's mission statement is to have high school graduates career or college ready on graduation. I have learned what that means is they're ready to go to trade school on graduation. Doesn't mean they're career ready. They've just taken plain English and twisted it into Chinese. Most of your students are not going to be graduating from college even if they go. This whole program is geared to college training. Half of your students should be career ready when they graduate from high school. That means they need to have been in trade schools, training, learning a trade of some kind, electronics, plumbing, fixing motorboats, whatever. Cooking, cosmetology, anything, we got it there. But you're not graduating from that. They're selling everybody on college as the Holy Grail, and it is not.
This is actually for all three of the candidates, and I'd like to know what your view on comprehensive sex education in the schools is. John, well, actually, let's start with this one.
I wrote about that 2 days ago after it came out in the paper, but they were going to get it in. I was totally for it, and I was glad he got it in, that the religious people didn't get it shut down. And you're talking Key West, especially, you read something almost every day in Citizens Voice about people slamming homeless people or welfare And that's what I think about.
This is, of course, a very controversial subject. The chief source of the values and guidelines for sexual behavior belong in a home. But there's no point pretending in our politically correct times that that's what always happens, because it often doesn't. Society certainly has some responsibility to teach young people the facts about and the consequences and the parameters and the social issues involved in making those kinds of decisions. To keep kids ignorant hasn't proved very successful in the last couple of generations. I remember at the school we're hearing over the Bright controversy in Key West. A young lady just gone off to college stood up and said, you know, in my high school class there were, whatever the number was, but it was an impressive number of girls already pregnant. She said, we already know about sex. Apparently it just didn't know enough. But despite all the issues of political correctness, we certainly have a duty to arm young people with physiological facts, with the moral consequences, with the life consequences of having children that are too young and out of wedlock. There's no disastrous future prospects for the kid, as well as for the mother. And the lad's probably too young to be the kind of father that a child deserves, and all those things. So we have to be realistic about what we teach them, and then hope with that on the families that they make the right decision. But pretending.
Sex education programs are nothing new to all high schools, and especially high schools in Monroe County. They've been associated with classes called life skills management classes. I know for sure all three high schools have offered that before. Remember, when you initiate a sex education class at a high school, you have to have the ability for parents to opt out. Whether you believe that or not, parents have that ability to opt out, written permission. Most students are very comfortable talking about sex in schools. They may not be comfortable, now this is a generalization, they may not be comfortable talking to their parents. So I think it serves a valuable purpose to have that education, that orientation in school. Keep in mind that most sex education classes are electives. Over the course of the years, we've had good programs at all high schools, but they've fallen prey to budget cuts. Electives oftentimes are the first courses to go. I do think it's worthwhile. I'm exceptionally fond of this program because it's funded by another agency.
It's a question for all three of you. Sloan, we'll begin with you, then Ed, and then John. In what ways can the school district and Florida Keys Community College work together to provide better educational opportunities for Keys students?
Well, I think there's two ways. And I think they do it to some degree, but I think it really needs to be increased. I think for the really exceptional students, it's Key West High School anyway. They need to have accelerated courses. They can take it both plan the schools so they get a jump when they go to college. Those are the students that need to probably go there anyway. I just think they need to do a lot more of that. Like what they're trying to do with the collegiate charter school. They're trying to work something out like that. They're doing it, I think, with the community college. The other thing the community college would be invaluable at was integrating with this high school, especially in Key West, a massive trade program. So that these kids, when they graduate, like Sandy Downs' kid did, a master in marine mechanics. When he was 15 years old, he was making better grades than people at community college. They were 18, 20, 30 years old. He didn't fit in at Key West High School. You've got a lot of kids, as I said before, need to be going into a trade early on. Later they can go to college if they decide they want to. But I think that's what the community college can really help with. If this community community would wake up and see that that's what is needed. It's going to have to be a two-way street. Thank you.
Actually had a couple of discussions with the new president and with a couple of board members. We have such enormous potential, and this discussion goes back to when we thought I also did before I did the presidency a while back. My God, marine science programs, other colleges should be coming down here for cooperative programs from us in the middle of the best marine resources in North America. We have more boats registered per capita than I believe any other county in the country. You should have a marine mechanics course here, second to none, that people come from other places to take part in, because you can do it year round. Our tourism, our hospitality industry, all the stuff we have here is year round. In New England, it's a few months. And so the degree of co-op programs, partnering up with local businesses as well as the college, and of course the high schools should be feeders into that program. We should be graduating kids here with world class, certainly national class backgrounds in those major industries, which will allow them to get jobs and not move back in with their parents. And of course, our environmental assets are unique and equal by a few other places in the country as well. All these things that involve the tourism business, the operators, and all that.
Let me state that we've had plenty of partnerships the high schools have had with the community college in the area of dual enrollment and open door policy to allow high school students to take college courses at the community college. Where we need to expand, this is my opinion, is to form partnerships with the community college for apprenticeships and partnerships for training agreements. At Key West High School, we used to have a marine technology course where our students would take their core courses in the morning, and they would be bused out to the community college to take marine technology courses in the afternoon. We also did that with health careers occupation, except instead of going to the community college, they went to the local hospital. We did it with a partnership with the community college for scuba and scuba instruction. It was preliminary. They never really got into the instruction phase. But keep in mind, these were all elective courses that felt prey to budget cuts. They could be easy to start up again. They require a training agreement. They require cooperation with the community college. But I think the potential is unlimited for developing these programs with the community college and with other community agencies. We also have them with Keys Energy, we've had them with the Aqueduct Authority, but they can be expanded. You're only limited by your imagination when you partner up with the community to help students prepare for a career.
Okay. Candidate, looking at your list of campaign contributors, what does that list say about you, and what does your opponent's list say about them?
I very purposely did not seek partisan political donations because this is a nonpartisan office, I think, for good and apparent social reasons. I chose to spend my own money instead of asking for partisan political donations. And in fact, I haven't worried too much about raising money. I believe in this enough to spend a chunk of my own money. I've already invested a lot of years and a lot of time in kind. I was uneasy about the thought of partisan political donations in what should be the least partisan of all public service opportunities.
Sure. How did I know this question was going on? Let me respond to that. I did accept donations from political parties in the U.S. As I looked at the legislation, I asked permission from the supervisor of elections. It looks to be the interpretation of taking donations from political parties. That legislation was crafted for non nonpartisan races, not for the fact of accepting contributions, but on the other hand, so everybody could have an opportunity to vote in the primary. In other words, regardless of your political affiliation, the nonpartisan races were created so everybody can have an opportunity to vote. I would have taken money if it was offered to me from all the political parties in Key West. They didn't all offer it. And someone might say, and someone has said, that it makes you vulnerable to influence. I don't buy that. Again, political rhetoric. You are no more influenced by political parties than you are by your campaign contributions. If you look at your list and you have influential men on there, influential women in the community, if you have business, if you have law firms, these are all people who may be looking for influence heavily.
Well, and what John didn't say was the union gave him $500, the teachers union. I wonder what the Republicans thought about that. I have never solicited campaign contributions from anybody, and the only thing I've been given was trinkets, which I accepted. I think it should be illegal to accept campaign contributions or belong to a political party, for that matter. I think all reasons should be nonpartisan. And that's how I feel about it.
Thank you, Solomon. Thank you, gentlemen.